Hi, I'm Lindsay, and today we are reviewing and discussing chapter 151 and 152 of Sakamoto Days. So in the last two chapters, the fight between Nagumo and Gaku, it got started, which is the whole reason I started even making reviews, because they're two of my favorite characters, so it's hurting me more personally than usual. I adored them both so much. And yeah, I just have a hard time. But these two chapters were very exciting and a lot happened. It was mostly just between them, just a fight, just a total brawl between them. But it made me tense. So yeah, let's just get into it today. Please comment, like, subscribe, do all that. And yeah, let's start talking with chapter 151, which is called Nagumo versus Gaku. They're just getting into it. Okay, also, my copyright strike on my channel that was about my Nagumo video, it's less than a month until it expires, so yay. I'm very excited for that, and we will celebrate somehow. But anyways, let's get into it. So we're back at it again, experiencing the pain of watching my two favorite characters fight each other. And I didn't really want to see this happen, but I have to admit, I got a lot from these two chapters as far as characters go. It's a fight, but there's a lot that we can enjoy from watching how they fight, how they interact, their weapon choices, and how the chapters end. That's important. So this chapter starts with them just destroying the wall in the museum and crashing through it and just causing total chaos. But I guess this is what civilians are expecting to see, because they don't seem very fazed by all of this. So these two are talking a bit more now than they were previously. And Nagumo is just being fucking rude to Gaku, asking him if he needs a bathroom break. Meanwhile, Nagumo is thinking that Gaku is like the toughest person he's ever fought. And Gaku is saying pretty much the same thing out loud, that it's been a long time since he's had such a rough time. So they're both acknowledging here that their opponents are just strong as hell. It was always hard to gauge how strong Gaku and Nagumo were, because they almost always destroyed their enemies and we barely got to see what they were capable of fully. Besides Gaku getting cut up by Takamura, we just got to see him getting torn up there. So we're really getting to see them put more effort into it and give it their all. So Gaku is like, okay, let's wrap this up quick. In a flash, gets behind Nagumo, and is ready to hit him. But Nagumo dodges, and Gaku destroys the little walkway that they were on, and he mentions it later, but Gaku values the weight of his weapon a lot and the sturdiness of his weapon. And we see it's probably incredibly heavy to be able to do that, of course, with Gaku's strength taken into consideration. Since later on he says he would break Nagumo's weapons if he ever tried to use them. But Nagumo is quick, okay? Nagumo is quick and transforms his weapon into a scythe and goes to strike Gaku in the head, but Gaku stops it with the handle of his weapon. And we see for the second time now, Gaku used a 1-inch punch. And it just really shows this insane control he has over his body and his strength. And also especially that in one hand, he's holding his weapon, which is very heavy, as I was saying. And in the other hand, he is able to pull off the 1-inch punch. It's kind of insane. They describe the 1-inch punch there on the side there. It virtually has no wind-up. Was popularized by Bruce Lee, and you just need insane strength and body control to be able to pull it off. And Nagumo was like, oh, you're a fan of Bruce Lee then? And Gaku's like, nah, never heard of him. Nagumo also recognizes the way Gaku fights is similar to Sakamoto back in the day, which makes sense. And that really paints the picture to Gaku's strength as well. And honestly, even their character designs are a little similar. So yeah, Gaku just destroys a plane with this 1-inch punch, and it's falling to the ground, and Nagumo is being his usual distrustful self and thinking it's fishy that he wouldn't know who Bruce Lee is. And then his weapon changes into an axe, and to me it gives off major Monster Hunter switch axe vibes. That's what I thought of right away when I saw it. So also sometimes, and we'll talk about it, Gaku looks very scary. And sometimes he looks adorable and lost. And here's one of those moments because he's starting to think and wonder about what Nagumo's weapon is turning into. And it kind of starts to throw him off, and he's beginning to like overthink it and says it's an annoying weapon and wonders what other shapes that it can take and what it would be like if he used it. What are all the forms of this weapon? You know, he's thinking a lot about it. But then Gaku is like, oh, this is a pain. I'm overthinking this. All I need is to just like get out of my head a little bit. And he starts to switch up his mentality on the fight. So we have seen Gaku playing games throughout the entire series, and if we know two things about Gaku, it's that he likes video games and he likes to nap. Those are two of his favorite things, I think. And also that I love him. That's the third thing. So he imagines that he's controlling himself fighting in a game now instead. And now there could be something to say about the fact that Gaku's life has kind of been controlled by Uzuki and how this is all he's ever known and all this whole fighting life is all he's ever really known. But he was always a fiery dude, so maybe I'll just save all that theory for another time. But just the hands around Gaku, I know it's like him controlling himself, but I feel like his life has been controlled a lot. And like I said, he's fiery, but there's like an element of him being actually controlled in this story. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I don't think that's what I was supposed to pick up from it, but that's what I saw. That's part of it for me. So he says to Nagumo that killing is just a game, and if you don't enjoy it, then it's just a waste. Also, just love this panel of him so much. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. It's beautiful. It's giving everything I need in this moment. It is so good. Now, Nagumo doesn't say anything to this, but we get the little ellipses, which isn't quite silence on his part, so maybe he does have something to say about this, but Nagumo's quiet moments are sometimes his most telling moments. So the fight begins again, and Gaku just goes for it. And Nagumo stabs him in the arm, but Gaku doesn't fucking flinch, and that look in his eyes is just like the look of death. And Gaku snaps Nagumo's sword by rotating his arm. Like, just rotating his arm. Like, bitch, what? It even surprises Nagumo. It was so cool. But Nagumo, he has like a ton of speed and adaptability. So he does this like spinning kick thing on Gaku, and Gaku gets a hold of him, throws him, and attacks, but Nagumo deflects with his weapon. But Gaku says as Nagumo's weapon starts to crack and break that what matters most in a weapon, like I said earlier, is sturdiness and weight. And Nagumo's weapon is starting to shatter. But like out of nowhere, Nagumo uses that like insane speed that he has. And like this is always just a flash, like we never really see these transitions. And he stabs Gaku right in the stomach with this so-called invisible blade and says that the key to killing is deception. And the chapter ends. I mean, that's not very surprising for Nagumo to do, but still, oof. He makes a mockery of people, that's for sure. So this would be a hard one for Gaku to come back from. He seemed very obviously surprised by this and now has like a massive wound. And this is all happening so fast, so it's hard to imagine how Nagumo was able to get Gaku in that position when it looked like he was the one losing and his weapon was breaking. But Nagumo is one of the strongest characters, and besides that and his incredible speed and adaptability, he's very good at deceiving people. Who knows how far back in this fight he was planning to do this, but Nagumo will pull out all the stops when fighting and use strategy, lies, deception, and complicated weapons to win when he can. It's hard to get the jump on a character like him because he probably takes so many different timelines into consideration and what could happen when he's fighting, and the man will use deception and anything he can to possibly win, and not just win, but further himself closer to getting to Uzuki and accomplishing what he's been wanting to do for so long. And that might be sooner than I expected. So let's talk about chapter 152. Okay, this chapter starts off right where it ended last, with Nagumo stabbing Gaku in the stomach with this so-called invisible blade. Nagumo apologizes because he didn't feel like he could beat Gaku by just punching him around, because it would be hard to get the upper hand on someone like Gaku in a fist fight, because, I mean, we've seen what Gaku's capable of. The man has actually insane strength, like, just beyond. And control of his body, too. It's not just strength, like, he has actual talent on top of that. And skill. And Nagumo is like, well, I had to cheat in this fight a little, and like that's Nagumo. He's gonna do whatever he can in this scenario to win and use whatever strategy he can. And of course he calls it a cheat, especially since Gaku uses video game lingo a lot. Like, you can kind of see it that way and see it as a Nagumo sort of like mocking Gaku's way of thinking. I mean, I could be wrong, but Nagumo would do that. He would definitely do that. So it turns out the sword is not invisible, though. It's not entirely invisible. As Nagumo says, it gets dirty when it has blood on it. And Gaku realizes that it's some kind of sword made from ceramics, which is interesting, and it isn't totally invisible. So it's cool that we get some explanation on this weapon. And Gaku says that Nagumo uses all these fancy weapon transformations so that he can pull a move like this eventually, and that just speaks so true to Nagumo's entire character as well, right? Like, his intentions have always been hard for people to pin down, and even down to the way he fights, he's unpredictable and difficult to figure out. So Gaku says he's a difficult kind of guy to fight. Nagumo says that Gaku, he's not gonna last very long if he doesn't do something about that wound. So Gaku, being the fucking badass he is like, you know what, this wound is fine the way it is. And he thinks to himself how besides the old hag with the katana, which is Takamura, I'm guessing, there was another person that he can enjoy. So Nagumo asks Gaku if he's giving up, but also right away is like, yeah, you don't look like the kind of guy that would give up. And that's exactly right, because bitch, Gaku gets up again and says it's more exciting when there's a time limit in a fight. And that from now on, that this is a killing speed run. Also, that was the name of the chapter that I forgot to say, I think. And so, of course, with the video game lingo again, like, he's a nerd, that's what he does. And this panel of Gaku, it's terrifying. It's so gorgeous. Everything is so beautiful, and I adore it with my entire heart. The Gaku panels are always drawn with so much character that, like, the most subtle changes in his expressions can be very telling. I mean, to me anyways. I'm like a big Gaku girly, so I'm a big Gaku girly. That's who I am, okay? I overanalyze every tiny change in facial expression. That's just who I am. So Gaku picks up his speed a notch and just flashes towards Nagumo. And okay, one more thing. I'm obsessed with how Suzuki draws hair. It is always beautiful and flowing, and this panel of Nagumo's hair, I just love it so much. Like, just the single strands of hair, so good. So Gaku punches Nagumo into a car, and Nagumo looks perturbed, like he looks more serious than usual and more damaged. And Gaku's punches are obviously very intense and hitting hard, and Gaku crashes through the top of the car, and they start fighting through the headrest of the car, and Nagumo is stabbing a blade through the seat, like, repeatedly over and over, and Gaku is just dodging. Then Gaku uses his weapon to propel the car forward off the, like, walkway thing, propels it forward with a blast, it drives off the little pathway, and they both abandon the car. And these little panels of Nagumo, he looks like, I don't know, it's hard to nail down this emotion. I want to say he looks annoyed and tired, just over it at this point, but it's hard to tell. But Gaku is able to shoot Nagumo with his weapon towards the ground, and I don't know, I'm guessing Nagumo is able to, like, dodge it or something, because he obviously doesn't get, like, blasted through the chest with it. He seems okay in that regard. So it seems like he was able to somewhat dodge it last second. But yeah, he's able to finally grab his weapon again. And we just get that beautiful, gorgeous, perfect panel of them fighting and looking serious and pissed off. And the perspective of this panel, like, we got the Dutch angle, the foreshortening and the pose. Ooh, it's beautiful. It is so pleasing to look at. Like, how is this manga not so beyond popular? I don't understand. It has some of the most aesthetically pleasing fights to look at, and just panels in general that are so aesthetically pleasing to look at. I don't get it. Okay, so we cut away from this fight back to Sakamoto and Shin's group, and we see that people are hearing the fight happen. Toramaru says that it's Master Slur and his group, probably, and that she feels uncomfortable since he's like, Izuki is like her new role model, I guess, and she feels uncomfortable with this whole situation. So Sakamoto and Shin have finally met up again, and so now mostly everyone is together, but now we finally get someone asking where Amane is, where he went. He disappeared a few chapters ago when he saw Shishiba, and that's like the last time we saw him. So Shin is like, can't find him, and Sakamoto wants to sort out exactly what's going on here. So Shin explains that the plan about using explosives and Mafuyu and Toramaru were just decoys, which thank God, because there were a lot of holes in that plan. Like, especially since Kirishima was now on their side and not helping Slur. So he's giving Sakamoto and his group like intel, and I'm sure Izuki is aware of this. Like, I'm sure he knows or has figured that one out. So Sakamoto says that the JAA's priority is to eliminate enemies and that civilians can get caught up in all of this. So Shin is like, Seba, open the entrances to get civilians out of here. And Mafuyu, the sweet, sweet boy Mafuyu, is like, what about you, Shin? Let's get away together. Oh, so cute. Cares so much for Shin, it's adorable. But of course the others leave to get people out of the museum, and Shin and Sakamoto stay behind. And like, side note, Shin's looking pretty good here. He's looking pretty buff. So Seba tells them not to push themselves too hard, and the group splits up, which is Sakamoto and Shin run off, and Shin tells Sakamoto that according to Mafuyu there should be 5 people for them to worry about. But Sakamoto is like, well, the order is definitely gonna get in their way, and he knows how strong they are. And Sakamoto says that they would not lose without a reason, which is interesting. But then Sakamoto stops in place because he sees Nagumo on the ground, and he has been seemingly killed and stabbed with his own weapon 4 times. Like, it could be that he died before that and then the weapon was just put in him. Like, he could have died from another way, but you know, that's there. So Sakamoto just says, Nagumo? And we see a very not alive looking Nagumo, and then it cuts to Gaku walking through a hallway, and he's all bloodied up and hurt, and he hears someone talking to him, and of course it's Izuki. Of course it's Izuki! And Izuki is like, it's rare to see you so ragged up. And Gaku looks back at Izuki with a fucking death stare, bitch. Like, the look of death. He turns around to see Izuki, and Izuki just says, are you still able to fight, Gaku? And then the chapter ends saying that Slur invades. Yikes. That is so much tension built up in one chapter. Okay, so obviously I'm just going to say what we're all thinking here. Nagumo is a master of disguise. We know this. And most certainly that could be him disguised as Gaku, and it most likely is. There are some odd things about this fight and how it ended that it's easy to come to this conclusion, besides the fact that he's already like a master of disguise. So first, it ended off screen. Like, we saw so much of the fight, and then the way it ended was off screen. So, which immediately makes me suspicious that we don't see how it concluded. And which, when that happens in the story, it usually means something. Usually there's some kind of mystery going on here, something we shouldn't know about yet. Like, it's just, you know, another way to build tension. So 2, Gaku stabbing Nagumo over and over with his own weapon just seems unlikely. Gaku obviously values his strength. He values his weapon a lot. Like, he talks about it a lot. And this just doesn't strike me as something that he would do. Like, Gaku is such a straightforward guy and isn't really one to make a mockery of someone, especially someone he finds strong. Like, I just don't see him doing something like that. And maybe I could be totally wrong here, but he would gain nothing out of doing this to Nagumo, and if anything, I could see him breaking Nagumo's weapon because he found it annoying. But this seems oddly out of character, and I think he would take a bit more pride in his abilities to not disguise who killed Nagumo, right? Like, he would make it obvious that it was him. That's just how he is. He's a bit more of a showboat than that. I feel like Gaku, yeah, I feel like if it were Gaku, he would make it more obvious that it were him. Probably not like totally on purpose, but I think he just values his weapon and his strength too much to make it look like a bit more inconspicuous, you know? And third, that last scene with Izuki, you can see it in his eyes, like when he hears his voice, that look of hatred there. And maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but Nagumo hearing Izuki's voice would set him off, okay? And if that's him, then you can really see it in the eyes of Gaku. Like, you can see that look of hatred. Also, so they have like the same eye color. So also there's wounds from the fight. Like, Gaku had an almost fatal wound there from the invisible blades. So him walking around being fine and being asked to fight again, it's just a little odd to me. Unless Nagumo like patched him up or Gaku patched himself up, you know? It's just a little strange. So if that is indeed Nagumo in Gaku's body, then one, please, I hope that Gaku isn't dead. Please, I love Gaku so much. I think he could add a lot more to the story. I actually really do. So I don't want either of them to die. But I just really want Gaku to just not be dead, and I'm worried about him. And yeah, into what the hell is going to happen next? This is why I like this, because it's so many questions are raised after this chapter. Izuki might even know it's not Gaku and is pretending that it is, or he's like, are you still able to fight because they're gonna fight now because he knows it's not Gaku? Or would Nagumo even fight Izuki right away? Like, what's the point of going through all of this and disguising yourself as Gaku and just to fight Izuki, like, right away? And he's already probably tired and beat up from the fight with Gaku, so there might be more that we might see from the next few chapters in that regard. And it also could just cut back to Shishiba or Sakamoto next chapter, so honestly, who knows? I could see it that happening, that it would cut back to Shishiba or something like that, because it would probably build up a bit more tension. Of course it would, right? Of course it would. So if we do see Izuki and Nagumo / Gaku next chapter, I'll be a little surprised. Maybe that's just me being so used to Jujutsu Kaisen and it never going the way I think it's gonna go, but yeah, I have no idea. Nagumo, and if that is Nagumo, he could pretend to still be Gaku. Like, Nagumo could still just pretend to be Gaku or just make it obvious right away. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities going in my mind now. Like, there's a lot happening. I'm not sure. It's really hard to say. I just really want Gaku to be alive. I want them both to be alive. Like, it's tough because they're my favorite characters, both of them. But if they do cut to Shishiba, I'm excited to see, like, what would happen next for him. Like, is Ozaragi gonna show up, or other members of the order gonna show up? Like, what's gonna happen with him? He can't take everyone on by himself, and he's cool as fuck, but he still can't do that. So he obviously is gonna need help. So yeah, I'm wondering how that's gonna go for him. But yeah, next few chapters are going to be very telling. I'm getting nervous that this is going to be like one of the last arcs in this series, but I think there's a lot of things that could set up that either this arc goes on for a very long time, or there could be arcs after this. It really depends. There are a lot of storylines that aren't done yet, and like a lot of things to conclude, and so many questions that I have. So I don't think that. It's just that I get worried. I don't want this and Jujutsu Kaisen to end at like the same time. I will not know what to do with myself. So yeah, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Really, this story is so good. Like, I'm getting more people into reading it, and I'm glad, but like more people need to pick it up. There's so much nuance going on now. You can just interpret so much from it. Just like, even from the like quiet moments, you can interpret a lot. Oh, it's amazing. But anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say for this. I can't wait for the next 2 chapters. And yeah, so if you're watching this, I'm also going to be doing Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reviews like this now, where I do 2 at a time. So if you're here, you know first. Or maybe I made a community post. But anyways. Okay. Bye. Have a good day. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And yeah. Bye-bye.